Welcome back to this edition of Snowman in the Morning. Glad to have y'all with us. And I have a very special guest right now on the Invader Coffee Hotline. We met because of a call that I made in 2012. And y'all remember earlier in the show, I talked about the Marist Miracles. This is a guy that recognized me because of the Marist Miracles, and he wanted to learn how to do play by play. And I was more than happy to take him under my wing. And to say that I'm proud of him would be a horrible understatement. There's so much more I can say about this young man, but I will let him tell the story of how we met. Please help me welcome Mr. Conor Clingen, voice of the Kane County Cougars, from close to my hometown in Chicago. Conor, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Brian. It's great to get on the show. And, I remember coming on Snowman in the morning that first season doing St. Joe's. So it's great to be back on.
It's great to be back with you, man. I mean, the first season that you were covering St. Joe's for football. We had the games on our network. It was such a joy to hear you call the games. But I've had people ask me how many people have run into me because of the Marist Miracles, and you have the best story about that. Why don't you tell everybody what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. We were both doing different streams for, I'm forgetting the name of the league. I think it was the Chicago Steam against the Chicago Breeze.
Mm-hmm.
And I was filling in for a friend of mine who was an intern. I believe he was working for the Breeze and you were working for the Steam.
Yep.
And I heard your voice and I totally recognized it from the Maris Miracles. I had seen those clips go viral, doing some play-by-play work in college, and I was a big fan of it, being from the Chicagoland area. It's like, hey, that's, Marist High School right on the south side of Chicago, and I heard your voice. I said, that sounds. I think that's who called the Maris Miracles, and so I brought it up to you, and thankfully, you gave me some opportunities with St. Joe's, which I'm very grateful for. That, at that time, coming out of school, I had thought about hanging it up a little bit, and was just looking for an opportunity, and was glad that I ran into you and got one.
I'm so glad that we met and ran into each other also, man. I mean, it was so much fun hearing you cover St. Joe's, and it was also fun that we got to call a game together at St. Joe's in the old
Yeah,
gym.
yeah, that was great. It was Hall of Fame night, and that was a cool experience because those were two of the last seasons that Coach Pingator was there, and of course, unfortunately, once the pandemic hit, St. Joseph's ended up closing,
Yeah.
and that's really sad. An institution in Chicagoland basketball, obviously in the movie Hoop Dreams, and Coach Pingator being a Hall of Famer, and but it was a special experience to be there, and it was awesome. We got a chance to call a game together there.
It was absolutely great. It was a full house. Most of you have heard me talk about Chicago Catholic League games before here on the program, and such an experience doing it. I covered St. Joe's for part of the year that I was with Conor. Covered Brother Rice for 12 years. Had Mount Carmel for about 8 years. I've seen St. Rita. I've seen the Tech Center. Well, of course, it's DePaul Prep. It was Gordon Tech once upon a time. And man, you know as well as I that when you get a chance to cover a Catholic League game, which is sold out all the time, doesn't matter the records or anything like that, it's just one great experience after another.
It is, yeah. It's a special league, and again, it's unfortunate St. Joe's is no longer around, but still to this day, I mean, seeing the Chicago Catholic League, DePaul Prep just won a state championship there with Coach Kleinschmidt, and I know I saw them have some battles with St. Joe's. Actually, if I remember, Rashid Bello, who went on to play Division II at Parkside in Wisconsin, he made a
Hmm.
half court shot at the buzzer to beat St. Joe's, and that was a legendary game. And it seemed like it was almost every week you were going to get a battle like that, whether St. Joe's was playing Loyola, DePaul Prep, St. Pat's is a big rivalry for them as well. Just a blast to cover that league always.
The two schools I covered the most, of course, were Marist and Brother Rice. I had each of them for about a decade, and it's so much fun covering that battle and all the battles in the Chicago Catholic League. And like myself, Connor has called a myriad of sports. He's a graduate of the University of Notre Dame, and he covers a sport that I love covering, but I haven't done in a while, especially in the CCL, and that's hockey. What was your first hockey assignment, and tell me how that experience is?
Yeah, it was actually when I was in college at Notre Dame. I don't think I had any business at the time doing it, but they actually put me on the color commentary with Mike Monaco, who's now doing the NHL on ESPN. I mean, he's a fantastic play-by-play voice. But I knew some hockey just from being a Blackhawks fan. My dad played when I was growing up. He played beer league hockey. I used to go to his games, so they felt confident enough to put me on the color commentary. I want to say the first game I did was a Notre Dame Vermont game, and I don't know if I want to go back and check the tape, but ever since then, I've continued to. It's a difficult sport to call, no question about it. I mean, you gotta make sure you have the entire roster memorized. And
Hmm.
when I first started there, I think I was kind of flying blind, but since then, I've had more great opportunities with Notre Dame. I've done some work with Western Michigan hockey, and then last year I was filling in as the voice of the Rockford Ice Hawks for a little bit, which was a great experience as well. So, love doing hockey. It's an awesome sport, and this year also did a little bit of hockey in Chicagoland with New Trier and St. Viator. Did a game with Don Johnson. He's a blast to work with as well. So, yeah, no, hockey's a lot of fun to cover. I really enjoy it. It's fast paced. It's exciting. And I'm glad I've been given opportunities and improved in that sport because I'm sure, when I first started, like I said, I don't think I had any business being on the air there.
Sure you did, man. You had business being on the air, and before my wife and I move west, we got to do one hockey game together. We got to do at least one.
Absolutely. I'm in. We'll find one.
And the other sport where we need to do a game together, you are the voice of the Kane County Cougars, and I've always wanted to have a summer baseball schedule. I haven't gotten the opportunity yet, but I've listened to some of your calls with Kane County. How much fun is that to have your summers filled with baseball?
It's a blast. And, I'm very lucky to work with a guy who you may know, actually, a Marist High School graduate, Joe Brand, is
Yes.
the pre and post radio host for the Blackhawks. He is the voice of the Cougars. So I'm the number two guy. And Joe and I, he's very gracious, giving me the opportunity to do a lot of play-by-play. But we love working together. I mean, it is so much fun to come out there to Kane County. And they did lose their affiliation a few years ago, so they're now an independent team in the American Association. But the great thing about Kane County is the fans, that doesn't matter to them. They still pack that place. It's over 5,000 fans a night. And being an independent team, I think it actually makes the games a little bit more interesting
Mm-hmm.
because the players are more experienced. And while they do want to develop and try to get to the next level and try to get back to affiliated baseball,
Right.
it's much more about winning baseball games. When the Cougars were a single A team, it was about developing talent for whatever the major league club was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a team in the American Association, George Samus, their manager, his goal is to try to win baseball games and eventually win a championship and bring it to Kane County. So it's made for really exciting baseball, and it's a blast to come out there for 50 nights of summer.
I had the thrill of covering the American Association. I was covering the Gary South Shore Railcats for the better part of 5 years. And in 2013, when they won it all, you want to talk about a place going crazy. A championship to Gary, Indiana, the American Association Championship to Gary, Indiana, and that was their second. That was their second championship because they won the Northern League title in 2005. Man, to get to that part of the season, to get to the playoff part of the season, I can honestly tell you it's crazy because in 2017, the last game, the last game was to determine not only a playoff spot but also a division championship. We needed Winnipeg, we needed the Gold Eyes to lose, and the Railcats took care of their business. But as the summers go on and standings come into play and how many wins get come into play and the players are playing even harder than ever, as you said a few moments ago, to that, can you speak to that level of how exciting it gets late in the summer when you're competing for either a playoff spot or a division title?
Oh, it's very exciting, and it's totally different. I've had the opportunity to work in affiliated minor league baseball when I was with the Winston Salem Dash, and
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, I loved that experience. They were a White Sox affiliate; it was very cool. But you can just sense, even at the ballpark, when it gets late in the season, the American Association, the fans are invested. They're
Yeah.
going up and looking at the board and seeing what the standings are like. You're walking around the concourse and they're asking, hey, how far out are we of first place? Do we have a playoff spot locked up? Uh, it seems like the fans, it basically translates from the field. They can see that these players are really giving their all to try to win that championship, and then it translates over to the fans as well. And, speaking of the Gary South Shore Railcats, they have a super passionate fan base. Their fans come and travel out to Kane County. They bring their, I think it's cowbells or noisemakers of
Yep.
some kind out,
Yep.
and they're a great fan base. I have a great appreciation for what they do, and that's the fun thing about that league is you have a lot of teams in close proximity. With the Cougars, we've got the Chicago Dogs that are a big rival. They
Yep.
made the championship this past year. You've got the Milwaukee Milkmen
Milwaukee.
just up the road, Lake
Mm-hmm.
Country, which is a newer franchise as well. So it's a great league, and it's been a blast. Before I worked for the Cougars, the first game was in 2021. I really didn't know much about the American Association, but now having been in the league for a few years, I really enjoy it, and I think more people should learn about independent baseball. And the guys out there truly, you know, we used to talk about college athletes, how they play for the love of the game. Well, now I think with the NIL, that's maybe not the way that it used to be either. But truly,
Right.
these guys out there, they are playing for the love of the game. They're not making the big bucks. They're not getting these $1 million contracts. They are trying to keep their careers alive, and they are busting their butt every single day. And it's awesome to be around those guys. The Cougars have a great clubhouse, led again by George Samus, who you probably saw used to be the St. Paul Saints manager for a long
Yep.
time,
Yep.
won multiple championships there. He has, created a great environment where it's focused on winning. They have fun. It's still, it's still got that independent league baseball aspect where they do the promotions between innings, and the players will put on weird costumes if they need to sometimes and things like
Yep.
that. They have a
Yep.
lot of fun with it, but they're still out there to win every single night.
Conor Clingen joining us here on the program, sharing some broadcast stories. And I tell you what, man, the game that we did together at St. Joe's, like you said, it was Hall of Fame night. That was the first time in person I've ever had the chance to meet Coach Pingator. Such a wonderful, wonderful gentleman. I mean, if it weren't for the fact that we had a ball game to call, we'd have sat there and chatted probably the entire night. And I had a chance to meet a lot of the fans in the St. Joe's fan base. They played Brother Rice that night, so that their fan base was there. Of course, the Crusader Crazies were there. Bobby Frazier, one-time player for Brother Rice, was the coach. So it was kind of a reunion for both of us. And man, I'll tell you what, the score may not indicate it, but those kids had a fun night.
Yeah, that game, that was a special night. The Hall of Fame night. It just shows the legacy of St. Joe's, how much that school meant to the Westchester community and all the alumni of St. Joseph. And I mean, Coach Pingator, it was special to get to cover him and his teams there because you just knew you were in the presence of a living legend. And,
Hmm.
God rest his soul. Of course, he, ended up passing away in 2019. And to be there for those last few years, it was special. And it's something I'll never forget. I still, to this day, I keep in touch with, Mark Sassetti, a number of different people in the St. Joseph community. And though the school is gone, the spirit of St. Joseph and Coach Pingator,
Hmm.
I feel like really lives on through the alumni, a lot of the past players, parents, everybody that was involved with that school. They still have a lot of pride in what was going on there in Westchester.
Yeah, they do. And there's so much pride in broadcasting. And I was asked who my inspiration was to get me started in play by play. And once I say the name, a lot of Chicago people are very familiar with him. His name is Jim Durham, former voice of the Bulls for many, many years. I was so hooked on listening to him and Johnny Kerr call Bulls games. And I went into this industry with a simple philosophy: if they can do it, so can I. And my first game came at Chicago
Yep.
State University in 1995 off of an idea, just purely off of an idea. And my friend Kevin checked out a camera, and I said, "Can you attach a microphone to that?" And he said, "Sure." And with only a roster, that was my first game. And I also had a chance to meet a fellow who became my first mentor in the game. Of course, the recently retired Mr. Bill Baker. And y'all will see that interview that we did at a later date. But man, once you get into the industry and you meet the right people, you are locked in because they're ready to give you advice.
Yep.
They're ready to help you move forward. And I am so proud of you, my man, with all the calls that you've done, all the games that you've done, including the recent one at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. Let me ask, how much fun was it to be there and to see that building and just be around the Syracuse Orangemen? Of course, I'm using the old name, but how much fun was it to cover? How much fun was it to cover a game there?
That was a surreal experience, Brian. Very very lucky to have that experience, and I have to give a big thank you to Tony Simeone, who's now the voice of Notre Dame men's basketball. He's been a really big advocate for me as well. And this past season, any game that he happened to be out for another obligation, he really recommended me to the Notre Dame athletic department and was able to fill in for 3 games. But no question, the one at Syracuse was the most special of all of them. And, it was a wild game. Notre Dame was down by 29
Mm-hmm.
with 2 minutes left in the first half. And they went on a 9-0 run to close out the first half. Ended up getting within 3 points. But Syracuse held on. And it was actually Jim Boeheim Day as well.
Yeah.
So Jim Boeheim was being honored after the game. And the Fighting Irish, they came so close to ruining his day, which, would have been a lot of fun. But
Yep.
it was cool to see that as well because actually after the game ended, I was sitting out there doing the post-game show, and out walks Mike Tirico, who, of course, is a Syracuse alum,
Yep.
and he was emceeing the festivities for Jim Boeheim Day. So it was awesome to see Mike Tirico out there and all the, so many Syracuse alums that have, gone on to great careers in broadcasting. But, yeah, that was a special environment. Obviously, the largest stadium that I've ever had the chance to broadcast in. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm really thankful to Notre Dame men's basketball, and watch out for them, Brian. I mean, they
Yep.
had a losing record this year, but Coach Micah Shrewsbury, he's got some exciting young talent. A young man named Marcus Burden who just won ACC Freshman of the Year,
Mm-hmm.
and then his son Braden Shrewsbury as well. They've got a foundation building there in South Bend, so I think Coach Shrewsbury is going to have them in the NCAA tournament before you know it down the line.
Conor Clingen joining us here on the program, telling some broadcast stories. What you got coming up next, man?
I actually have a little bit of a break here. My most recent job that I had was this past weekend. I was doing some baseball at UIC. That was a lot of fun. It's a great ballpark, Curtis Granderson Stadium. One of the best views in college baseball. I would say the best because you've got an incredible view of the Chicago skyline from the near west side. So
Yep.
I had the chance to call 3 games at UIC this past weekend, and I'm going to be on some baseball and softball for the Flames this spring, and also be doing Notre Dame Boston College baseball coming up in April. And then when we get to May, that's when the Cougars will start up again, and I'm really looking forward to coming back this season working with Joe Brand. It's going to be great.
Well, I'm looking forward to listening to you and keeping up with your progress. I love you very much, brother, and thank you for coming on the program. That's Conor Clingen, play-by-play announcer in my hometown of Chicago. Check out the Kane County Cougars beginning in May, and that's where you will hear this fabulous voice. Thank you, my brother, so much for coming on. I love you. I love your progress, and I can't wait to see more of it.
I love you too, Snowman. Thank you very much for everything. Like I said at the beginning, that opportunity at St. Joe's, it meant a lot to me. It got me started after college. So it means so much to me. I'm very thankful, and thanks very much for having me on.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we got some more stuff for you coming up for you. Yeah, I thought I'd said that right. All our guests appear via the Invader Coffee hotline. Invader Coffee, fuel for the fearless. We got more for you. Back after this.